Today my guest is Lauraine Snelling.
They have to hit a wall in their life where God has to shake them hard and shake up their faith so that they really come to believe He is who He is.
Live your faith and pass it on. Share the gospel clear and strong. Stand for, claim your heritage of truth.
Welcome to Heritage of Truth. Today my guest is Lauraine Snelling. Welcome, Lauraine.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Now, you are an author of how many books now?
76, I think.
76, and they're all novels?
No,
No, do you
I
have
actually
nonfiction
wrote
too?
three nonfiction books too.
Three nonfiction books too.
I know, it's a shock.
But you are well known for your novels, especially your horse books early on. I remember my daughter
A lot of years ago.
really
yeah.
enjoyed those.
I'm glad.
Yes, and your latest book is called Wake the Dawn,
Yes.
and that was a real, almost harrowing adventure kind of.
That's good
book.
words for it. Thank
Yes,
you.
it was. It was.
It is.
It was a really good read. I was wondering what prompted you to write that book.
There's a story behind every story, is what
Mhm.
I'm finding. I used to think that that was unusual, and a lot of authors don't have that, but that's the way God gets through to me. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyway, I spend a writing week in Las Vegas at a timeshare once or twice a year, so I can hide out and write. So I'm on my way back, driving home in California, and driving across the desert, that flat area right there, and I heard a man's voice. No, I heard a woman's voice saying in a very weak and broken voice, "The radio is not on. There is nobody else in the car."
Ooh.
Ooh is the way, yes. And I heard a voice, but very broken and very hesitant, weak voice saying, "Ben, I love you. I'm going home." And I started to cry. And I cry now even when I start to talk about it. And I don't know why I cry all the time like that about it. But I started to cry, and I cried. But at the time I'm crying and thinking, who are you? What is going on? What is happening? God, what are we doing here? Come on. And it's not good to drive when you have, when you can't see for the tears. So I got myself under control again and was driving, and I didn't stop driving that time. And I heard it again. And it just came, and it was the same way. Very weak, and, only this time I heard Ben yelling. It was, "Ben, I love you. I'm going home." And him screaming, "Allie, Allie, where are you?" And I'm going, "Allie, Allie, who are you and where are you?" so I, there I was, and I cried, and I cried, and I cried.
Mm-hmm.
And that happened twice before I finally pulled over at a rest stop and said, "Okay, God, this has got to stop because I don't want to have an accident."
Right.
And every time then I'd go back and it just kept coming to me. It did not go away, and every time I cried.
Was that the beginning of the book?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I thought
the
so.
very
Yeah.
beginning. And I thought, well, that's an opener.
Yeah. That's a good opener.
Right, but I didn't know what the story was about or anything. But I knew that someday I wanted to write a border book.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, maybe this is my border book. And then the next time I saw a scene, and it's a scene you and I just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And he's driving a black SUV with Border Patrol emblem on the side. I know this
Mm-hmm.
by now. It's 2 years since Allie died.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how I know these things. I just know these things.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going along. And Bo, the dog, is with him. And I met the dog several years ago, but I didn't know his name yet.
Mm-hmm.
And he's a precursor to a German Shepherd. They're a breed that's like that, but they're lighter weight.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, in this car, this dog is just ricocheting off the walls. And those dogs don't do that. A Border Patrol dog is trained
right.
to the nth degree. And so Ben is cussing at the dog and finally slams on the brakes. He opens the door. The dog bails out. Dog just heads right across the muskie. Oh, now I know even where it is. It's northern Minnesota. It's not the southern border. And so he gets out. It's raining. It's blowing. It's getting worse. There's a storm that's on the way, a bad storm. Mm-hmm. They have no idea how bad yet. Mm-hmm. And he follows the dog. Dog won't come. Those dogs always obey. Mm-hmm. And he finds Bo lying right next to a white wrapped bundle, and it's a baby girl. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, who, what, where, when, why, and how. And so anyway, he picks up the baby and runs for the truck. Mm-hmm. And that was the end of that scene. And then the next scene, he's driving into the clinic. And those are the ones that I saw.
Mm-hmm.
And then a lot of the rest of the story just came in bits and pieces. And knowledge about it came in bits and pieces.
So is that how you often get ideas
No!
for stories? So this one was unusual.
This
Okay.
is the wildest one that I've never, well, I've heard voices, but I tell people, if you're going to write fiction, other people go for many years of counseling to get rid of the voices in their head. We get to write books.
Yeah, well, I mean, they talk about characters coming alive as you write.
And boy, mine do to me.
Yeah.
They really do. Obviously, Ben does, and Bo does too. So anyway, that's where the story began, and I found out then, as I went along, that it was about human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's one of the things in that northern border,
Mm-hmm.
that's going on. And a mother was forced to leave her baby.
Yeah, how horrible.
And so I did this, and it just came together so strangely, and yet it turned into a real, sit on the edge of your seat kind of book.
Right.
As this town is decimated by a huge, huge rainstorm and cut off, and all of the things that go on. And Esther is the PA at the clinic trying to keep people alive.
The only medical professional there.
Yes, and the Border
Yes.
Patrol plays a big part, and
Yeah.
it was just a marvelous book to write, but it was not an easy book to write but a lot of the scenes flowed because I'd already lived them with these people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. God does things in strange ways.
Yeah, he does. So was there a faith element in this book that you especially wanted to bring out?
Well, I think these characters do, because Ben lost his wife 2 years earlier,
Mm-hmm.
freak accident, and what does he do? What do we do so often when something tragic happens? We get mad at God.
Yeah.
Of course, why not? We can blame him for everything. He's got broad shoulders. And so that's a lot of it, is the faith, the shaken faith.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, obviously, if that shaken faith is part of it, then we're going to come through to God's saying, I am the truth, the way, the truth, and the life, and I am faithful.
Right. He kind of eases back into his faith.
Yeah. I don't usually write the, kind of a
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
I write the struggle that we
seems
take to go through.
very organic and natural. The
Thank
way
you.
he eased
Thank
back
you.
into it. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, if you are a believer and you have these down times, it isn't like an epiphany, like when you first are saved. Usually, if you have these down times, it's like kind of like the Lord gentling you back to Himself.
Well, and
Yeah.
the question why, immediately, that's the question when we have, and I'm sure you've done it. Well, maybe not, but I have, and so they say write what you know, and so I'm beginning to be convinced that the reason my life has been a soap opera is so that I have lots of things to know to write about.
Well, I don't know a whole lot about your life. How long have you been writing?
Since 1980.
1980.
God put His foot in the middle of my back and sent me to a writer's conference. I'd always planned and dreamed, and that someday I'll. He said now, and I said, okay. Of course, I never do things if they're going, yes, Lord, of course. It's always, are you sure? I'm sorry. Okay.
That's probably a personality thing, and
Probably, but-
we had a guest that talked about personalities, and he makes some of us a lot more that way, and a lot
Right.
more like, sure, whatever you say, more complacent, and
Yes, and
Yeah.
some people are like that, and some of us aren't.
yeah,
But I'm just so grateful, and so I have those things to draw on. And we all do if we're going to be. If he calls us to be a writer, he's going to have put the things in our. Oh, I never thought of this before. Oh my goodness! Epiphanies. If he calls us to be a writer, he's going to put the things in our lives to write about.
that's true.
And I never thought of it quite that way before. But that's really a very basic truth. And I talk to young people who want to write, and they don't have any life experiences yet to write about.
They always say write what you know, and it's like, what do you know?
Yeah, not a whole lot yet.
Yeah.
Of course, we think we do. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Anyway, that's how Wake the Dawn came about.
The character who's the PA,
Esther.
She's an interesting character to me. She works so hard. She has this dream of having a hospital in that town. She's so devoted, so dedicated, and yet she doesn't really have a whole lot of faith in herself, which is kind of sad.
But isn't that
Yeah.
the way we so often are.
Oh, yeah.
And she's hiding a secret. And
Mhm.
any time
Mhm.
we're trying to live a secret,
Mhm.
or live that lie,
Right.
we don't have the confidence, because how can we?
Right.
And again, another shaken faith, right? You know,
Right.
raised in the church. A lot of my characters are like this, that
Mhm.
they have to hit a wall in their life where God has to shake them hard and shake up their faith so that they really come to believe He is who He is,
Mhm.
and that He does what He says He's going to do.
So tell me why you think fiction is so powerful.
Because God created us to learn by story.
Mhm.
I mean, He built it into us. If we took all of the plot lines out of the Bible, they're the ones we all write about. You know, Jesus' life is just a marvelous example
Mhm.
of the way God wants us to tell stories. And so if He created us to learn that way,
Mhm.
it's a shame we don't always put that to practice. But He
Yeah.
did. Stories teach us, and we remember them. Now, see, you remember Esther.
Mhm.
You know?
I didn't remember her name, but I remembered her character.
Yes, and that's my dream, is
Yeah.
that people will remember these characters.
Mhm.
And I've had one of the earlier ones that just ripped me apart. A young girl wrote to me, and this is when I was writing the children's books, and the father dies of cancer
Mm.
in that first Golden Filly series. And I knew about that because our daughter had died.
Oh.
And so I knew about grief.
Mhm.
And a young girl wrote to me, oh, here we go again. I have to have very waterproof mascara. And she said, I'm like Trish. I am so like Trish. I love horses. I do all the things, except she said, I barrel race. I don't race thoroughbreds.
Mhm.
But she said, my father won't quit smoking, and he's dying of lung cancer.
Mm.
And I saw God take Trish through that, and I know He's going to do the same for me.
Wow.
And that's exactly what every storyteller dreams, that we will find a character and we will see what God did in their lives, and then we will say, if He did it for her,
Mhm.
surely He will do it for me.
Right. To have that kind of influence is really
Right.
amazing.
And so that's why stories, people love to read story. But of course I get people, that say, well, stories are lies, and I can't read that. I just read the Bible. And I'm like, okay, fine. Bless you. But I figure if God created us this way, that He meant us to learn this way, and I want to be walking close with His will.
Mhm.
I tried my own frequently, and it doesn't work real well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when you think about, for centuries, people have told their children stories like the Big Bad Wolf, things like that. Back in Europe, when wolves were a real danger, they
Right.
told stories
And
to
it-
help the children know they had to stay out of the woods.
Okay, and God said what to the Israelites? Remember, remember, remember. Tell your children, put it on the doorposts.
Yeah.
Remember what I have done for you.
Right.
And if we don't look back and remember, we forget,
Mhm.
because we are such good forgetters.
Oh, yes.
And so consequently, we've got to remember. That is just so critical.
Mhm.
And we can do that best through story. If you ask me what year something happened, I've got a real problem. But I can sure tell you the good and the bad things that went on that year.
Yeah.
So that's the way we are. He programmed us that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you have in the works?
More books.
I know.
I have a new one. It's called Heaven Sent Rain. That's a
Mm.
contemporary. But then because I always write historicals too, that's
Mhm.
my first been the ones I write the most. The prequel for Ingeborg, and people have been just asking for that book for so long. And then now with the next historical, I get to go back to Blessing, the little town I created in North Dakota,
Mm-hmm.
and write 4 more books about the Blessing people.
Oh, that'll be nice.
It will be, and it's just a lot of fun to get to
You
find
feel like
out.
you know the characters.
Oh yeah,
after a
we
while,
live
like they're
those
real
characters.
friends. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
and people just say that. Well, you've got to tell me what's going to happen next, and I say I can't. I don't know until I get there.
So, can you describe for people who don't write, what is a fiction writer's life like?
Crazy. Mine is. I know a lot of people who are they have everything in order, and no matter what they did in life, they would have it that way.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not exactly like that.
Mm-hmm.
But God takes where he's got us and he works with that. And so I'm a storyteller first and foremost, and I'm a fiction writer because that's the best way to get stories out there. And I write a lot, especially the closer I get to deadline, the more I write hard. And I dream a lot. You know, I have to think stories into these things. I love to garden, paint, all these other kinds of things that like to keep me busy, and so I'm finally learning how to be better organized.
Wow.
And so that's really been an exciting thing in the last couple of years. I keep saying God is making a new me.
Oh, that's cool.
It is.
Well, being a fiction author, you know, especially when it's best-selling like you are, it's not all glamour, is it?
Now that is about the understatement of the year. Yes. And I know I went into this thinking, you know, I'm a storyteller. This is going to be, you know, an easy thing. It's not. It's a lot of hours in front of a computer. Of course, I started out with a typewriter, but in front of that computer, and it's a lot of hours of just playing with words. And I like playing with words, but, you know, I like doing other things too. But a fiction writer's life, I think, will always have adventures in it. For most of us, because if we don't have adventures, we don't have adventures to write about.
That's true.
But my biggest thing is I get to meet all these incredible people.
Yeah.
I love meeting people. I love being around people, which makes it a little bit hard because you don't usually get to write around a lot of other people. But
Well, where can people find you online?
always on Facebook. I love Facebook. I have a ball with Facebook, and it's under my name, Lauraine Snelling. I have a website, LauraineSnelling.com.
And you spell Lauraine how?
Lauraine, although
Okay.
I think somebody said you can find it spelled about anyway.
Okay.
Website, email, all of those things.
Okay.
I try to be accessible because I like people.
Great.
Yeah, I know, it's a little bit different than a lot of people, a lot of writers especially.
Well, thank you for being our guest.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I mean, come on, what a privilege.
Well, it was really fun seeing you again.
Good, thank you.
Stand